Let me tell you what a hater actually is. Not what the word has come to mean in culture, not just anyone who disagrees with you or criticizes your work or tells you something you don't want to hear. Criticism is not hate. Honest feedback is not hate. A person who challenges you because they want you to be better is not a hater. That person is valuable and you should keep them close. A hater is something specific. Hater is a person who wants you to fail, not because your failure would benefit them in any concrete way, not because they have a legitimate grievance, because your success makes them uncomfortable in a way they have never fully examined. And the easiest resolution to that discomfort is for you to stop succeeding. They are rooting against the thing you are building, they are rooting against you, against the version of you that is becoming something, against the proof your life is starting to provide that the excuses they have been making for their own stillness are not as solid as they thought. That is what is underneath the hatred. Not malice usually. Exposure. The progress is a mirror, and some people, when they look in a mirror and see the gap between where they are and where they could have been, would rather break the mirror than reckon with the reflection. You are not the problem, you are the evidence. And the evidence is making them uncomfortable enough to want you to stop. John 15 verses 18 and 19. If the world hates you, keep in mind that they hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Jesus did not tell his disciples that hatred was a sign something had gone wrong. He told them it was a sign something had gone right. The hatred was confirmation that they were no longer shaped by the same thing as the people around them, that they had become something different, that the choosing had separated them from the world they used to belong to. If you are being hated for building, for growing, for becoming, you are in good company. You are in the oldest company. And the hatred is not a verdict on your worth, it is a confirmation of your direction. Here is a temptation when someone wants you to fail. You want to respond, you want to explain yourself, you want to defend the work, justify the direction, prove that you are not what they are saying you are. You want to turn toward them and make them see what they are missing. And every minute you spend doing that is a minute you are not building. Nehemiah 6. The wall is going up. The enemies of the project send message after message asking Nehemiah to come down and meet with them, to pause the work, to step away from the build and engage with their objections. And Nehemiah's response is one of the cleanest lines in all scripture. I am carrying on a great project and cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave while I leave it and go down to you? He did not argue with them, did not explain himself, he did not take the bait of their invitation. He named what was actually happening. I am doing something great, and he returned to it. The wall kept going up, and when it was finished, in 52 days, enemies who had tried to stop it were the only ones who were dismayed because the completion of the work was the only argument that mattered. Success is not just the best revenge, it is the only response that costs your enemies anything. Everything else, the argument, the defense, explanation, the confrontation, costs you time and gives them attention. Success costs the narrative, and narrative is all that they have. The narrative is that you are going to fail, that you are not as capable as you think, that the thing you are building is not going to work. that who you are becoming is not real, or not sustainable, or not as significant as you are making it out to be. Every day you keep building is a day that narrative gets harder to maintain. Every milestone is a data point against the story they are telling. Every year you are still standing is a year they have to keep holding their breath. Let them hold it. You have a wall to build. Psalm 23, verse 5. You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Read that carefully. The table is not set after the enemies are gone, it is set in their presence. The anointing does not happen in a private room after the opposition has been removed, it happens with the enemies watching. The overflowing cup is not the reward for a battle won in private, it is poured out publicly, visibly, in front of the exact people who wanted the cup to be empty. God's answer to your haters is not to remove them from the room, it is to bless you so visibly that the room becomes evidence. The success is a testimony, the building is the argument. Overflowing cup poured out in the presence of every person who wanted you to fail is the only response that matters. I want to talk about something that happens to men when they are being watched by people who want them to fail. They shrink, not always dramatically, not always consciously, but the awareness of being watched by hostile eyes does something to a man's environment. He starts to qualify his wins. He stops talking about what he is building because he does not want to give anyone a target. He scales back the ambition, not because the ambition is wrong, because ambition that doesn't work out will be visible to the people who are waiting exactly for that. He manages the risk by manages the risk not by building smarter but by building smaller. He protects himself from the exposure of failure by limiting the height of what he is attempting. And in doing so, he gives his haters exactly what they wanted without them having to do anything. The man who shrinks to avoid the visibility of failure has already handed the win to the people who are rooting against him. He did not fail publicly. He succeeded at becoming smaller privately. And that is worse. And that is a worse outcome than the public failure he was trying to avoid. Genesis 50, verse 20. Joseph to his brothers who sold him into slavery, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. Joseph did not shrink. He could have. He had more reason than most men ever will to play small, to stay quiet, to manage expectations, to protect himself from further exposure. He had been betrayed by his own family, enslaved, falsely accused, imprisoned. Every person who should have been in his corner had used him against himself. And he kept building. In Potiphar's house, he built. In the prison, he built. Every environment that was designed to diminish him, he found something to steward, and he stewarded it fully. Not because the conditions were good, because the God who was with him was larger than the conditions. And what his brothers intended as destruction became the platform for everything God had prepared him for. The harm became the path, the betrayal became the path, the betrayal became the position. Every person who wanted him to fail became an unwilling participant in the story of his success. That is what happens when a man refuses to sink. The opposition does not disappear, but it gets repurposed. It becomes part of the story rather than the end of it. Your haters are not obstacles to your story. They are characters in it. And the role they play, whether they become the evidence of your resilience or the last word on your potential, is entirely is determined entirely by whether you keep building or stop. I want to be careful here because this episode has an edge to it, and I do not want it to produce the wrong thing in you. I'm not asking you to build out of bitterness. Bitterness is a weight, and a man who carries it into his work will find that it slows him down more than it drives him forward. I'm not asking you to make the hatred the reason you build, because that makes your haters the center of the story, and and your success becomes dependent on their opposition. The day they stop watching is the day you stop having a reason. That is not the foundation I'm asking you to build on. Romans 12, verse 21. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. The overcoming is with good, with the quality of the work, with the integrity of the build, with becoming genuinely, substantively, undeniably the man God made you to be. Not to prove anything to anyone watching, but because the man is worth becoming regardless of who is watching. The haters are not the reason, they are the audience. Build for God, build for the calling, build for the man you are supposed to be, build for the man you are supposed to become, and the people you are becoming will serve. And let the haters watch. Let them hold their breath through every milestone. Every year you are still standing. Every evidence that the thing they said would not work is working. That is not vengeance. That is faithfulness with an audience. Nehemiah did not build a wall to prove his enemies wrong. He built it because the city needed a wall and God had called him to build it. Enemies were not the reason, the completion was the reason. But the completion, when it came, dismayed them completely. Not because Nehemiah was trying to dismantle them, but because the faithful work finished well is its own argument against every voice that said it couldn't be done. So here is how you use it. Every time you are aware of the people holding their breath, every time the knowledge of their waiting lands on you, let it remind you to get back to work. Not to confront them, not to defend yourself, to build, to add another course of stones to the wall, to make another decision that the man you are becoming would make, to do the work so well and so consistently. The breath they have been holding becomes unsustainable. They cannot hold it forever. The question is whether you will still be building when they finally have let it go. Let me say this directly to the man who needed this episode. You know who is watching, you know who is waiting, you know the people who have written you off, who said it won't work, who have placed their bet on failure and are sitting back waiting to collect. Do not give them what they are waiting for. Not out of spite, out of faithfulness, out of the conviction that the work God put in your hand is worth finishing regardless of who is watching and what they are hoping for. Out of the understanding that success, real, built, compounded, undeniable success is the only response that costs them everything, that costs them anything. Nehemiah did not come down from the wall. Joseph did not stop building in the prison. David did not shrink because Saul wanted him gone. Jesus did not stop because the Pharisees needed him to. And you do not stop because someone is holding their breath waiting for you to. Make sure they suffocate. Make sure they suffocate, not with anger, with work, with faithfulness, with the kind of building that makes the watching unbearable for everyone who bet against you. I know what I just put in your hands. Use it right, build for the right reasons, Keep God at the center of why you are doing this, but do not slow down. Do not shrink. Do not give the people waiting for your failure the satisfaction of a smaller version of you managing their comfort. The world does not build itself. Get back to work. This is built, not felt. Otherwise, good. I'll see you all in the next episode.